Well, it's not to say conference season is always a grind, but man, the way this schedule is unfolded, it's as I tell my guys, you guys all want to be pros until you actually have to feel what it's like to have a pro schedule, when you actually have to practice and then play and then practice and still take care of your body. Unfortunately, they're not pros and they have to go to class still, so that makes it a little bit harder. So no excuses. I mean, everybody's having to go through it. Boise had to really go through it initially. I think they've only played one game since, we played them last Monday. I think that was at Fresno. But just, both teams, just played a week and a half ago. We know each other really well. Nothing, there's nothing complicated. Can you just do what you do better than what they do? And, the first game I thought, that was just a back and forth game. They threw the last punch and got us, but I thought we did some things well in that game. And there's some things that we didn't do well that, we hopefully got to learn from. And, like I said, they've won 14 in a row, probably the hottest team, maybe the hottest team in the country. I'm not sure if anybody else has won more than that. There might be Auburn or somebody, I don't know, but it starts with their defensive identity. They take pride in that. You can see that. Got to do a good job of minimizing turnovers, which they kill you in transition. And, hopefully we can keep them off the glass. And, last game we out rebounded them, and, that's a big emphasis of what we do on a daily basis. But in order to beat a team like them, you gotta try to limit them to one shot. And I thought we did a really good job of that in the last game. We got to last few games. And sometimes when you haven't been able to practice and you really go back and look at our practice plans in terms of where we actually really practice in terms of 5-on-5 and actually had a real practice, it was probably leading up to Boise the first time we were supposed to play them. So really it's been almost over a month. Today we actually, we know what Boise's going to do, and we did our due diligence there, but we also, we actually got up and down and played some 5-on-5 and just to try to keep our rhythm. I think that's the thing. Over these last few games, we've turned the ball over a little bit more than, we're accustomed to. I think going into these last 3 games, we were top 10 in the country in terms of turnover percentage. I think we're down to like 35 now. And, regardless of who you play, you can't turn the ball over, 14 and 18, which is what we've done the last 3 games. And so I think, part of it is you get worried sometimes when, this time of year to really get after it. But I think in terms of where we're at, and in terms of the lack of practice time that we do get, because it's just, you go from a rest day to a prep day to play in the game. And it just, eventually you got to focus on yourself. You end up beating yourself more than the other team beats you. And so I thought we had a good practice today, and expect nothing but I don't like to use the term war, but it's going to be a battle again on tomorrow night.
Go ahead,
Jeff, you mentioned that first meeting that you guys were supposed to have, and I know that you were disappointed it got postponed, and the fans obviously that traveled were, but when you look at how it's played out, is it pretty cool that now the students will actually be here for Boise State, and with them on this winning streak and what you guys are doing, it kind of sets up to be really a huge game in the middle of the season here.
Yeah, it's, as a coach, sometimes it might be hard to believe. I could barely tell you what our record is. We're just focused on today, and I just know that to have the crowd that we had against Colorado State, to have the students, I think we had upwards of 2,500 students at that game, and you're sitting there looking, during the game, and you just see the student section just kept creeping higher. It was covering the very top rows of the AA, and that environment. It makes it a really special place and makes it a really hard place to play. And so hopefully, having won that game against Colorado State the way we won it, hopefully that momentum will carry over to Thursday. I think the weather, granted, it'll be a little bit frigid, but as long as it doesn't snow, I expect, the Cowboy fans and expect the students to be there like they were against Colorado State, and we need them.
Jeff, I got to ask you about Xavier Ducel's arm rub on David Roddy there before that second free throw. Did you know he did that, or did you see that on film? And what are your thoughts on that?
No, I had no idea. I didn't. there are a lot of things going on in my mind during that point in time. I mean, one was just praying that he would miss one of them. And thankfully, not very often as a coach are your prayers answered. And thankfully that one time it was. So I imagine my luck is out when it comes to asking the good Lord for a favor in a basketball game. So, I did see it. I mean, I didn't really, you go back and watching the film, you couldn't really tell, but that's just X is different that way. I mean, X is, he's really creative and really artsy and great with magic tricks. He's whatever that is, left brain. And I think, he can kind of see things ahead of other people. And so luckily he had one more trick up his sleeve.
Hey, Jeff, I know you guys take a game-by-game approach and don't treat opponents differently, but for you, what's it been like coaching in games this year like this one coming up that have really high stakes and just seeing the AA come alive like it did on Monday?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's cliche, but yeah, I mean, we just focus one day at a time. And I mean, I think X, when he was on here earlier, I mean, sounded like a coach, and luckily what we're saying is getting repeated by them. We just have to, just continue to, say we just got to continue to find ways to get better. I mean, we have 45 days, probably, to where, conference tournament ends. And, during that time, can we just continue, not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint, can we just continue to push through and show up every day? I mean, we shared with the team, Tom Brady's retirement deal, his retirement, I guess, Instagram post, but, when he talked about, just what he did every day for 22 years. I mean, there's no secret in terms of being great. I mean, it's easy in theory, but it's really, really, really hard to do. And you got to be able to show up every day. And I think that's the one thing that with this team and with our maturity and the type of kids that we have is that, we show up every day and we work, and they know that they're going to be held accountable to that. And luckily we don't have to. I mean, they just hold themselves accountable. And when you got a player-led team, I mean, that allows you to be in the position we're in. But as a coach, I mean, you just try to survive, one day at a time, and you just hope that you can get to the game healthy and let the chips fall where they may.
Jeff, can you kind of explain what makes Boise State such a good defensive team? I imagine it has a lot to do with their experience and length and the challenge of facing a team that probably believes it's going to win every game with this role they're on. I mean, I think they're 5-0 or 4-0 in conference road games already.
Yeah, it starts first. I mean, with their length and athleticism. I mean, a lot like us. I mean, you take Shavers out of the equation. When you got Aycock, Key Jab, Dagenhart, Armoose, Najee Smith coming off they got a lot of length and size. And then you add the experience factor, and I mean, they're one of the most experienced, oldest teams in the country. And those guys have been through a lot of games. I mean, a lot of games and a lot of battles. And it's kind of like playing a pro team where, you've played in so many possessions. I mean, you just kind of know what's going on. And then Coach Rice is, he's done a really good job in terms of just what they're doing defensively from a conceptual standpoint. Just really trying to keep the ball out of the paint, ice and ball screens. They're trying to, they must have watched my 3-point clinic that I did during the COVID Zoom, and they've really done a good job of taking away the three. I mean, my 3 years before I got here at UNC, I mean, we were number one in the country in minimizing 3-point attempts, and where they're at right now in terms of the number of 3-point field goals made, almost rivals a little bit of what we were at UNC my last year, where teams made 3.5 threes a game. So they do a really good job of taking away the three. You got to find ways to get threes. I thought in the second half in the last game, we did a good job of that. But it's one of those teams where you got to have a few different plans. You got to have a few tricks up your sleeves. But ultimately, we can't have a deal where we did last time where, you have 14 empty possessions. I mean, those empty possessions kill you. Luckily, we did a really good job on the offensive glass and got ourselves some extra possessions that way to offset the turnovers. And then, luckily for us, I mean, those turnovers that we did have, or a lot of those were dead ball turnovers to where we didn't allow them to get out in transition.
Jeff, how important is it going to be with this brutal stretch to get more offensive production off your bench?
Yeah, I mean, off the bench, I mean, with X now being back, I mean, Kenny's still day to day. It's just, we'll take kind of what the defense gives us and how they're playing us. But, and there's the guys that we do have come off the bench, I know they're capable of scoring baskets and making plays. But at the same time too, I mean, you get to this time of year and college basketball. I mean, you look at Boise, I mean, they're pretty much 7, maybe 8 deep. I mean, you know who's playing, and you just got to prepare yourself to make the most of those opportunities. And one of those guys like X, the guys coming off the bench, when they get opportunities to make shots, Noah, they got to step up and do that. But to have X back in this game is a big deal. I mean, I thought that was the first game, when he had not played, that we really needed him out there, and not just just from a stability standpoint and the ability to go make a play. And that's with their pressure and length, and if they want to get up and guard the 3 like they do, I mean, you got to make them pay off the bounce and try to force them in rotations in other ways. And so it's definitely good to have him back for this, and he's still making his way. I mean, it's frustrating when you have an injury like he had with that hamstring, and he's probably still not at 100%, but the Air Force game, you took him, he played 20 minutes, but you could see each game, and against CSU, I thought he definitely was moving a lot better, but it takes some time to get your rhythm and timing back with a deal like that. And it was a big part of why we got up and down today and played a lot of 5-on-5, is just to, especially help a guy like him who needs those reps, and a guy like Kenny Foster as well.
How much does having X back help kind of take the load off guys like Brendan and Drake? I know those two played close to about 75 minutes the first time you went up against Boise.
I mean, it just gets us kind of back to our normal rotation. Before, Kenny unfortunately has just been battling, injury, sickness, everything all year long. And so, he's really hasn't been part of the rotation. And so it's, that wing spot, it's been, that 2-3 spot, it's been X, it's been, it's been X, Wenzel and Drake. And, Drake, I think over the course of the last 3 or 4 games, I mean, he's been playing 40 minutes a game, a lot like Maldo has. And so, X just gives you, instead, another guy where, he can put it all, he can bounce it, kind of take a little bit of the pressure off Maldo, to not have to make every single play. And so to have X back, I mean, it does take off a little bit of pressure. And he's been in big games. He's played against the Boise's, the San Diego States, the CSU's, the teams that want to get up and pressure. He's felt that. Where in the case of the first game, where Noah really had never experienced that. And unfortunately for him, I mean, he had that tough little stretch there, but he learned from it and he'll bounce back.
How's it going, Jeff?
Hey there, BJ.
What you mentioned the defense. How surprising is that, knowing Leon Rice, knowing Boise State's team? They're usually winning games 85-80, not 55-50 or whatever. What's it been like just seeing their transformation and Leon finding, being comfortable winning these lower scoring games?
Well, I mean, I think just, a mark of a good coach. And I mean, Leon's not a lot of guys that have been able to survive at a job for, I came in there with him in 2010 and 11. I mean, for him to be going on what, year 12?
Yep.
That speaks volumes in terms of what he's done as a coach, and knowing that, as all good coaches, I mean, we're not married to a certain system. I mean, it's based off of, what gives you the best chance of winning. And, and that's, the beauty of Leon, and having worked for Leon, is that he's not, it's not, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to figure out a way to do this hell or high water. I mean, no, I mean, we're going to adjust to what is best and what fits our personnel, and, give him credit and the staff credit for, putting it together after, a little bit of a rough start, and putting those guys in a position to be successful, and knowing that, that ultimately, just with anything, I mean, it starts on the defensive end. I mean, my time at Boise, my time at UNC, I mean, Leon, I mean, Gonzaga, I mean, sometimes just because you look good aesthetically, offensively, and you had good offensive numbers, but when you really look at it, and the really good teams that we've had, I mean, they've been pretty good defensively, and especially, the thing about Leon's teams is, I mean, they're always going to be elite from a rebounding standpoint, especially on the defensive end now. And that this year, I mean, you look at them from the offensive standpoint, I mean, they're elite on that end as well. But I mean, when they hold you to one shot, I mean, ultimately it's about possessions, and the team that usually gets the most possessions, and the team that fights for the best shots within those possessions, is usually the team that wins. And, Leon, I mean, he's a sly fox, man. He's won a lot of games, and he's been in a lot of games, and he knows what winning looks like. And it took him a few games to figure it out, but they obviously are doing something right.
Have you noticed anything from them in close games? I mean, I know in the past it's been one of their bugaboos, maybe not closing out games and stuff like that. But this year, it seems like every game's coming down to the wire, and they're making a big play or hitting a big shot. Have you noticed anything? Why maybe late in games they're having success this year?
Yeah, I mean, that's good question. I think when you have a team that's elite defensively, where you don't have to rely on trying to outscore the other team, and I think maybe not having watched them super close, but having watched enough over the last few years, to where they probably were more offensive minded. Where now, I mean, their defense is winning them games, and then they got enough talent and enough guys that can make shots, down the stretch. And I think that's where, if you look at a lot of teams that win those close games, it's not necessarily the offense, but the ability to get stops. And I think that's the one thing that, we've been able to do is like them, is be able to get stops and win those close games. And I thought maybe the difference was in the last game, especially the last few minutes, was, their ability, Kejab's ability to get the ball to the front of the rim, whether that was off the dribble down or whatnot. And I think that was ultimately the deciding factor.
And final one for me, Jeff, what you just knowing this league and how hard some of the road venues are, and we saw what your atmosphere was like on Monday. How hard is it in this league to go on the road and win at some of the places they've won, and to get to 14 straight? I mean, that has to catch your eye, I assume.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I was there when they had the second longest streak back when we started off 2014 and 15, when we lost our first three. Lost at CSU, came home and Utah State beat us on a buzzer beater, and then came to Wyoming and got our tails kicked in. And then from that point, I think we went on to win 12 or 13 in a row, and it ended up sharing the conference title with San Diego State that year. And so having been in the league and knowing that the pressure that comes with the winning streak, and the pressure of knowing that you're right there on the cusp of an at-large bid, and knowing that there is more pressure. But then that's also too, where back then, them, now us, you have to embrace that pressure, and really that's what you want to be playing for. And that a lot of teams, I mean, as the season goes on, especially as we're in February, there's a lot of teams that are not playing for anything anymore, and they just quit every day. I mean, there's 58, 65 Division I teams, and right now in the month of February, I think whether they're 28 days, I'm not sure if it's a leap year or not. Graf could probably answer that question, but I mean, there's a handful of teams that quit every day. And so thankfully for us, Boise, I mean, we're in a position where we're playing for something. And so you got to embrace that. And then you got to embrace the environments that come with playing in this league. And I think that's, for us to have the environment that we did on Monday night, to see what this place can really look like. I mean, it was a special environment and atmosphere, and that's what you're going to see at the better teams and the better venues in this league, and that's what makes it such a hard place to play.